Hi, my name is Benjamin McGuire, and I'm an engineer at Aero Electronics. Today we're going to be talking about Veeam Availability Suite. Let's get started. So when you download the Availability Suite, you'll see that it comes with two separate products, Veeam Backup and Replication, as well as Veeam One Monitor and Reporter. So Backup and Replication is the, flagship suite of Veeam. That's what allows you to do backups as well as replicate virtual machines to other sites. You can also back up your data into the cloud. Veeam One Monitor and Reporter gives you all the analytics on your data. That's what's so important so that you can track your virtualized environment, whether you want to do cost reporting, you want to do sizing. Veeam One Monitor is going to give you all those tools. And we're going to go all over those in this quick demo.
All right, everyone, let's get started. Today we're going to be going over just kind of a basic overview of Veeam backup and replication, as well as the monitoring and reporting tools that come that you can purchase separately. If you choose to buy both of those, it's what's called the Veeam Availability Suite. I'm just going to quickly show you where to download those products, and then we'll get started with the interface overviews. So you're just going to go to veeam.com, downloads, and then you can choose to download the Availability Suite, Backup Essentials, Backup and Replication, or any of the other many products that Veeam has. I would advise you, there's a lot of free products in here. Check them out. Um, it's a great way to get your feet wet with Veeam and to see what they offer. And don't forget, these are very cut down versions. They are very powerful, even though there's not a lot of functions that they offer versus the full paid editions, but they're absolutely great tools to use. And then if you like them, then you're more than welcome to upgrade them for the full editions. What's nice is when you download these for the first time is you get a 30-day trial license with a fully functioning software suite. So I encourage you to try it out, download it, and only do that when you're about to ready to install it and then use the software. Otherwise, the license will run out and then you'll have to either purchase a key. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the interface overview. So the main console that I'm going to be going through today is Veeam Backup and Replication Console. There's also another product called Veeam Backup Enterprise Manager. This is a vital tool. I'm going to do another demo on this, going more in depth with this, but it's an optional install while you're on the same page as when you install Backup and Replication. I highly recommend that you install Enterprise Manager. There's the other tools that I'll go through briefly today, which is Veeam One Monitor and Veeam One Reporter. But let's go ahead and pull up the Backup and Replication console. This is, so to speak, the bread and butter of Veeam. Um, Without this, a lot of the other products, you can use them, but you're not going to be doing backups and you're not going to be creating replicas. Um, there is one other product that I will show today, or actually at a later time, I'm sorry, but it's the Availability Orchestrator, and where I'll actually be able to show you a disaster recovery scenario where I'll go through and it'll actually script out a DR plan. I won't actually have to do a lot of push a lot of buttons to get it to do that. It's a very cool software, a lot of automation that can be built in. And there's a lot of automation that can be built in with backup and replication. So if you're kind of like a one guy shop or a couple of guys that are going to be running the software, but you've got a lot to do, there's absolutely a lot of automation that you can build into Veeam where you can kind of set it and let it go. Um, and then you can get reports and stuff with those other products, Monitor and Reporter. So let's go on and go over the interface real quick. So as soon as you launch Backup and Replication, you'll come in and it'll come into the home directory. You'll see this little tab over here. It might not always show those. It might only show a couple of these initially. See, I'm actually deselecting them. It might look like home or files, something like that. You can always click on this little icon over here and tell it that you want to show these other icons. You'll need to be able to see these when you're building out your infrastructure. So under the Home tab, you can see all the jobs that you've created, whether they're backup jobs, replica jobs. You can see the backups where it'll actually show you, what was backed up. So I backed up this virtual machine called Lab SSMC. Here's the number of restore points, and then here's the location. It doesn't actually, browse to the actual file. Within this repository, there is a location that we can go to. I do believe that this repository um, is actually just a drive on my local computer. Yeah, let's go backup repo, and it's going to be here in backups. So backup job 1, let's check that out. Let's see, here we go. So here's where my backup files actually are. And you can see that there's incrementals, and then here's a full. I had done this, I think I had set up like, this looks almost like I had set it up for continuous. I believe that's the way I set it up, just to get some data written to the disk, and I was working on some other projects as well, but this is typically what you would see when you actually browse for the files. So here are my replicas. I've got a replica in Veeam's terms is a backup of a virtual machine, but it's that live virtual machine replicated over to another, in this case, a VMware site, and then it's powered off. And what it does is, for that job, it will pull take a snapshot of the live virtual machine, make backups of it, and then it'll replicate the changes over to this powered off virtual machine. And if I did like a failover scenario or anything like that, I could actually push this thing on, and it would actually fail over to the live virtual machine would fail over and run off of that powered off virtual machine. That's something I'll do in a later demo. It's very cool software. It's got the lowest recovery time of any of the solutions, just because you can literally just click a failover now button, and I can tell it to pretty much turn itself on with the latest changes, and you're back up and running. So it's very powerful. There's a lot of stuff that you can configure in these jobs for IP readdressing. So if you're send it to another site, you can change the IP addressing scheme. These replica jobs, there's ways to set the job up so it doesn't push a lot of data over that if you're using like a wide area network or a 1 gigabit pipe from site to site. That's high latency. You can use WAN acceleration. So this is just one of many tools that is very powerful with Veeam. Let's go ahead and go over to the inventory. Under inventory, this is where I have my vCenter servers, and you can see I've got two separate ones. You could call these like two separate sites. They're actually within my lab, but there's actually a lot of the data will actually go over a router. So when I'm going to do like a replica failover, I'm going to do what's called a replica seeding, and I'm going to try to make sure as little amount of data gets pushed over that router as possible. It's not a very robust router. I'm trying to keep the amount of data that I push over it to a minimum. So that'll be a good simulation when we get to that. Under physical and cloud infrastructure, here are my protection groups. This is where you're actually going to manage physical machines. And you see DL36001, DL38010. These are actually the physical machines that I'm protecting. It installs an agent on them. It's just waiting for a reboot to finish the agent install, and then I can start getting backups off of these machines. Let's go over to backup infrastructure. So backup infrastructure is actually where you're going to be storing a lot of your data, as well as how you're going to be moving it. So In the world of Veeam, backup proxies are what actually do a lot of the labor. In a small site, say you're not doing a lot, or you don't have multiple sites, you could just let the backup server act as a proxy and a repository if you wanted to. But in more of like a scale out infrastructure where you have multiple sites, a lot of different jobs, you're going to want to scale out and put a lot of those workloads onto different machines. So you'll deploy a backup proxy is really just bringing in, say, a Windows server or a you know any sort of Windows server that's running on a Hyper-V VMware, um, or it could be physical as well. Um, and what you're going to be doing is installing a service on that, so it will begin taking workloads, and then you can assign those jobs to those proxies. Backup repositories. Anytime you want to create a new repository, you can create it off a direct attach, network, deduplicating, or object storage. If you have like a object storage cloud service provider, you can select that as well. That's where you're going to be storing the data. And backup repositories can be added into a scale out repository. Um, and what this is nice is a scale out. Essentially, you'll choose a scale out repository in a job, but that scale out repository might have 5 or 6 what's called extents in it. And they're based on how you set up the job, you can tell the data to be pushed out over all of those extents or just on one of them, depending on the kind of speed and data availability that you need. So for right now, I just have one backup repository, which is this one. It's just a drive located on my physical host. And then I've actually got, came out in update Veeam 9.5 update 4 came out with the ability to do an age out process to Azure Blob or any sort of S3 compatible storage. So I have an Azure account. I've create an Azure Blob, and I've got some data that I've pushed up there. This is an age out process that's part of a scale out backup repository, and you can select all that when you do your backup jobs. I've already gone over WAN accelerators briefly, but you can add these in when you do some replica jobs. There's other uses for these as well. Sure backup. This is one of the coolest features of Veeam is with a sure backup, you have the ability to do scheduled testing of your backups. This is a very powerful feature. I'm going to go into this more in a later demo, but part of that is it will test the virtual machine. You can run any sort of uh, scripts against it. It actually puts it up into a isolated virtual lab, and then it'll run a bunch of different commands on that virtual machine to make sure it's up and running, make sure there's no corruption. You can actually run a virus scan on it if you want to, and you can leave it powered on so that way if you want to make changes to that virtual machine while it's in the lab, then you can do that. All right, let's go ahead and go down to storage infrastructure. And this is where you're going to be adding any of your storage providers that have either like an open API. Veeam does have a list of them, but some of the most common ones are going to be uh, whether the HP, whether it's 3PAR or Nimble. There's a bunch of stuff for Dell EMC, IBM, a lot of different vendors. So and as well as NetApp, please check these out. This is very powerful because what it allows you to do essentially is you can create snapshots of volumes while you're in Veeam, and then you can based on how you set the job up for a backup, you can do a backup off of these snapshots. So it's very powerful as far as having one console to be able to do a lot of work from. There's a lot of integration that goes in here. All right, let's go to tape infrastructure. I do have another demo that I'm going to show you guys later on with a backup to tape. But for this one, this is where you can add tape servers. You can schedule jobs where you dump virtual machines or files directly to tape, or you can kind of, I guess, patch on a tape job onto another just backup job if you want to. What it does is it's really, you'll already have a tape job scheduled, and then you'll add that job to another backup job. So it's kind of like having two jobs run within the same schedule. But this is very powerful. This allows you to get your data off-site and at least off the wire. It's not going to be available for any sort of malware attack, and it's very fast. A lot of the LTO3 uh, and later drives they're still putting out a lot of bandwidth. And Veeam, based on how it does a lot of the cataloging, can recover your data very quickly. Let's go down to files. What we can do here in files is you can actually manage files on any of your virtual machines or physical machines. So that way you can do file over recovery. This is very powerful if you just lose one file or you lose a couple of files. So I can scan down here and let's say I just want to just do a file job. Let's see. I don't have anything on the desktop there. That's okay. Okay. And I could add it to a file copy job if I wanted to. Um, so this is just a fantastic way. That way you can browse through. It's very granular, or you can just do a backup of the entire volume and then pull files out of it on its own. So there's a lot of functionality built into here, and I'm only showing you a piece of it today. Let's go ahead and go over to the monitoring and reporting software suite. So let's go into Veeam One Monitor. And I'm just going to use my Windows credentials. I've got some configuration issues that it's detected. So there's a lot of, I mean, right out of the bat, I haven't done a lot of configuring to this. I've just brought in my two vCenter servers, and it's showing me that I've got some latency. These are a lot of errors that you might see in vCenter server, but you're able to see them from this console. There's a lot of stuff that um, a lot of data that you can pull out of here that's very powerful. Um, yeah, I highly recommend that you check it out. This is a separate product from backup and replication, and it's absolutely something to use because it instead of having to look at a lot of different consoles, you can just have backup and replication up, and then you can have Veeam One Monitor, and it can send you SNMP emails, on anything that you see here. So what let's go on ahead and go over reports. Let's go to infrastructure view, and let's see if we can do forecasting capacity planning. And what I'm doing right now is I'm actually logging into Veeam One Reporter. Okay, so it's generating the report, and it gives you like a way to kind of parse through a little bit of the data. I'm just gonna leave it the way it is and do a create report. And bear with me for just a minute. It should be coming up here just as we speak. So this gives you a lot of yeah. I mean, here's average usage. I mean, this is just fantastic data as far as being able to see what's going on in your environment and do some kind of planning off of this. There's also a website that I can add a link to if you're wanting to do sizing, specific sizing. There is a calculator available for that. But these reports are very powerful for being able to get some insight into your environment based on how you set alarms up. Uh, so it's absolutely a recommended add-on to backup and replication. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you have an Arrow representative, just ask for Benjamin McGuire in engineering, and they'll be more than happy to get you in touch with me. And if you have any further questions, yeah, just feel free to reach out to me, and I'm here to help you out. Thank you.